So today, a couple notes. Do as thou wilt. Interesting. What's the problem with that? Well, selfishness. Do as thou wilt. That's wild. It's extremely dangerous to live by that slogan for those that don't have extremely high levels of discipline. So it appears to me from extensive observation and real life research that there used to be just a subsection of men that were contaminated with this philosophy. And fascinatingly, this very dangerous philosophy has been spread like wildfire among modern American women. And if you see podcasts and shows like dating shows where they've got a panel of women and they're asking them some questions and kind of maybe giving them a hard time about how some of their answers don't really make much sense, a very common observation and complaint that many men have is that these women have no accountability. They not only does their thinking not make any sense, there's no accountability there. And that's exactly how their thinking does make sense, is because they have no accountability. So to you, if you're a man and you watch these things, it may not make a whole lot of sense that women would say, that they want to be treated like a traditional woman should be treated, but then the very next sentence out of their mouth will be, they are absolutely, positively not interested in being saddled with any kind of duty. They will never make any kind of actual commitment, and under no circumstances do they agree to being in some type of unequal position when in a relationship with a man. And those things are absolutely insane. And this is why. So this is where these women are coming from. They have been programmed with this software that tells them to just do what they want, and that's where their righteousness comes from. Their salvation comes from themselves. And as you can probably observe, that's very dangerous, and it leads to the destruction of our society. So I would argue that don't do as thou wilt, because you probably have no idea what you're doing, and so it would be wise to gather the wisest people that you have access to and receive counsel from these people and make decisions accordingly. Also, anytime that you've got extreme selfishness on your mind, it's a good idea to mix that in with some thoughts about duty and commitment. And I'm saying this stuff today because I want to leave the world a better place than where it was and what it was when I got it handed off to me. I would hope that I can improve things in whatever amount so that when I hand this existence off to my children and I'm no longer here, that there's some understanding and some team working and some networking and a little bit of wisdom that can be passed along. So don't do as thou wilt. That's ridiculous. Instead, think of honorability. So yeah, this "do as thou wilt" phrase, it's a huge abdication of duty and commitment when wielded by women and men as well. And the disconnect there is pretty huge. They've developed our educational system and our culture to tell women that they're equal to men, and I think the correct way to phrase that is that everybody's equal in terms of a baseline level of respect. When you acknowledge that, this is if you believe there's a creator. If you don't believe there's a creator, then all this shit goes out the window. Nobody's equal in any way, shape, or form. And if you've seen any of my other videos, you'll know that I am more than happy to explain to you how nobody's equal, ever. I do believe that there's a creator, and I do believe that everybody, as a creation of the creator, should be treated with that respect. Anything above and beyond that is respect that they have to earn through actions, not through just existence. Okay, so the respect that you are given from just existence is that we don't just all run amok in the streets and kill each other and rob and steal everything that we want from other people. Okay, great, good for you. Now that that's out of the way, you're not entitled to any respect. You do not deserve any respect. You will not receive any respect that you do not earn through works, through behavior. And a lot of that will come down to discipline and honoring your commitments and your duty, understanding your place and your duty. So what is it about accountability that women are allergic to? Well, if you look up the standard definition of accountability, it's fairly clear why women would be absolutely allergic to this. And there's two notes here under the definition of accountable. Number one, subject to giving an account. Now right there, a woman is going to be absolutely mortified if she's in the position where she is subject to giving an account. Giving an account for what? Giving an account for her behavior, for her decision, for her thoughts, her decisions, and then following through on those thoughts and decisions with behaviors. And the first word in the description there, subject, well, if you are familiar with modern women in America, then you will know that they do not believe they are subject to anything. As a matter of fact, they believe they are queens, and you, for being in their presence, are subject to their existence. It's very sad, it's very silly, actually, and that's a big reason why there's such a high amount of men that are unwilling to continue tolerating women. Now, if you work a little bit on being charismatic and being friendly and being able to perform sales presentations where you can overcome objections and you're not outcome dependent and you can kind of roll with the punches, as they might say, and just kind of talk with people and not feel like you have to answer every single question that they ask you, but at times when you want to circle control of the conversation within your own hands, you can answer questions with questions, and do this in such a way that you don't actually create such a divide between you and your customer that you're in some kind of combative, verbal judo match. And that's how you want to be able to treat women if it is true that you want to engage in romantic relationships with women. It's very key that you can communicate indirectly instead of directly, and that you don't feel any real obligation to engage them in any kind of high-level conversation or any kind of intelligent conversation. That is, for the most part, a huge mistake. The second note under the definition of accountable is the word accountable suggests imminence of retribution for unfulfilled trust or violated obligation. And that, my friends, is a ringer. Because it's true. If you're attempting to hold someone accountable, well, that means that they're subject to your punishment in some, varying degree. It could be very small, it could be very large. The word imminence is going to make women uncomfortable, and retribution is going to make women uncomfortable, and unfulfilled trust or violated obligation is going to make women feel uncomfortable. So why are women so uncomfortable with accountability? That's why. Because they're not men. If you're expecting accountability from women, you're a fool. That's not what they're for. That's what you're for. And the attempt to hold women accountable is a fool's errand. So be very careful with that. Lower your expectations in that category if you want to relieve your life of a significant amount of frustration, and if you want to be able to proceed with comfortable relationships with women. Just you could say stop, you could say give up. Okay, yeah, stop trying to hold women accountable, give up the practice of trying to hold women accountable, or you could look at it just like learn the reality of the situation, which is that's not what they're for. That's not what they do. That's not how they work. And you don't have to be pissed off about that. That's not the winning move. The winning move is to understand that and accept that and then integrate that into your personality and be above it. So it's kind of like the saying where you don't want to, wrestle with a pig because they'll just drag you down into the shit. Same thing. You just shouldn't be doing ridiculous things like expecting women to be holding themselves accountable. It's complete nonsense. So things like reliability, accountability, self-discipline, and responsibility for others, these are qualities of a man. These are not qualities of a woman. And to displace that or misplace that, the expectation for those behaviors to be performed is that's your fault. If you're a guy and you're watching this video and you're like, yeah, women are not very accountable and they should be more accountable and everything, and that's fucked up that they're not accountable and they expect me to be accountable but they're not. Okay, bro. Yeah. All right. Do you want your woman to be like a man? I've had some relationships with very masculine women that were attempting to do their best rendition of what they think a man should be, or be some kind of boss babe type of thing in a man's world. And I'll tell you, it's just tiring. It's embarrassing. It's like hanging out with a loser. It's like, imagine when you're guy friends, and imagine like the biggest loser guy friend that you were ever friends with, that you're probably not even friends with anymore because you don't really spend a lot of time hanging out with fucking losers. But that's about the closest thing that you could correlate here. It's like one of these masculine boss babe type women that thinks they're equal to a man and all this ridiculous nonsense. It's like hanging out with your biggest loser friend that's a dude. It's like, God, this motherfucker has no idea how embarrassing it is to listen to the shit that comes out of his mouth. It's kind of like man, there's a comedian named Vince Vaughn. I haven't watched any movies in like 15 years, but there used to be this dude named Vince Vaughn who basically played the same character in like a whole string of movies, maybe like 5 to 10 different movies. And he got super famous, and the character was hilarious, and he was like really overdoing it in all these movies, where this particular character role was he was playing a guy who really had no self-awareness, and he was like talking a lot and saying inappropriate things and just being very outside of what would have been the correct attitude and communication for whatever given scene or scenario in the movies. And it was super funny. And there's an element of that at play here. When you have a woman who's trying to be a boss babe and who's trying to be in a relationship with an actual, like a man who's kind of like on the real man type of thing. And so you do not want to be around women that are like that. It's extremely boring. It's kind of embarrassing. It's really a loser's move. In my experience, the best, most healthy, most comfortable relationships have been with women that come from actually, the best one I can think of is women that come from immigrant parents, specifically like real poor Southeast Asian or South American immigrant parents, and they're born here in America. They're first generation American, born in America, but they're still raised in this culture where their dad is the dad and their mom is the mom, and their mom isn't trying to be the dad, and their dad isn't having none of that shit from the mom. She would never like challenge his authority in the home or try to step outside the boundaries of what a mother's duties are and be dishonorable to her husband. And in my experience, the children of parents like that are the easiest and the best to have relationships with. There's one Vietnamese girl from Orange County that I can think of now, and then one Mexican girl from San Diego that I can think of, that really were, I mean, high-level wife material. And I was in relationships with them at different points in my life, and the one that got away, the home run that I whiffed at was the Mexican girl with the super Mexican parents that were hardcore, like Catholic Mexicans from Mexico had moved to San Diego, and this was at a time when everything was going really well economically, and like you could, you know, dad could get a job at a normal company, and mom could like run a daycare out of their house, and you could become homeowners, and then you could wait for the market to go up and sell your home and get a bigger home, and a few years later sell that one and get a bigger home, and next thing you know it, 10 years down the road, you're living in $1 million house in Rancho Bernardo, and you got a son and a daughter, and everybody in the family has their own car, you know, you got 4 cars in the driveway, and people have extra money in the bank, and you have plenty of clothes and plenty of food, and you can pay the bills, and things are going really good. And those kids, her and her brother, were raised up to be great people. Now at the time, I was a street criminal drug dealer. So, and you know, I'm not telling any stories that need to be kept secret here or anything like that. You know, I was at later on in my life, I you know, had to face judges and courtrooms and everything over all this type of thing. But at the time, I was not in a position to really appreciate how wonderful an opportunity I had, where I had this girlfriend who really did want to settle down and get married and all that kind of thing, and I was like, no, I don't think so. And you know, looking back on that from where I'm sitting at now, of all the women that I've ever dated in my entire life, including the ones that I've married, including the ones that I almost married, including ones that I've met in other countries on the other side of the planet, that one was the home run. Absolutely. And then same thing with the Vietnamese girl whose parents came here on a boat from Vietnam. And I don't mean like a yacht, I mean like a fucking rowboat type of boat, like a really small boat where people were dying on the trip over here, where they got like robbed by pirates when they were trying to leave and things like that. So really crazy story for their family, but same thing, came to Orange County, worked normal jobs, became homeowners, flipped houses, became multimillionaires, had great kids, and their daughter at one point in time was a what I would consider a very high level woman. She had a great understanding of men and men's behaviors and men's likes and dislikes, and she was not upset to participate in the world as a pretty girl. She was very happy to take advantage of that opportunity, and she didn't think she was put here to like compete with men for positions that men occupy. And again, hardcore, old school, Catholic parents. So there's an element of that, religious upbringing, and it can be, you know, these good girls can be found without the religious upbringing if they come from a culture where men are respected as men and women are honored as women. I find it's a little more common with the actual religious families. But as you may know, now that's dwindling quite a bit. Most of the North American Christian organizations have really gave up the ghost when it comes to family dynamics, and there's far greater numbers of women that still go to church and support these churches than men. And because of that, when they operate these church organizations, they have to cater to women because that's who's paying their bills. If they were to start trying to hold these women accountable all the time, you can only imagine how quickly these places would go out of business. So, a couple more notes here for men. Our happiness very, very commonly comes from being responsible. Women appear to be chasing happiness and imitating the worst men possible. It's like they're imitating like villains from movies. Like they watch movies and they see these images of these men that are being made like famous and glorified, but they're also the villain in the movie. And you'll notice this in movies. That a lot of times they make the bad guy look really good and they make the good guy look like a bitch. And women pick up on that. And so when they go out into the world and do their impersonation of a man, more often than not, they're not impersonating the good guy in the movie. They're impersonating the bad guy because what they're after is power. Do what you will with that information. A lot of times that occurs because they had a weak father that set no boundaries for them and was disrespected by his wife in front of the children. And so that can be poisonous as well. Obviously, I'm sure you know about that by now, but that's definitely something to look out for. So these are all just opinions, right? This is all just, clip material and sound bites, and you're not really saying anything that people don't already know or whatever. And okay, if that's how you feel, I'll give you some numbers. Violent crime statistics corrected for baby deleting. Okay? So, over the last 5 years, the FBI states that there's about 8,500 women that have committed a homicide, and that there's about 61,000 men that have committed a homicide. Very interesting. So, what they don't mention is that there's been a reported about 5 million deleted babies in the last 5 years. So that's about 1 million a year. And that doesn't account for states that don't report the numbers, specifically California. I would say that you would have to increase that by about 500,000. I'm pulling that number out of thin fucking air. It's not coming from anywhere because there's no way to tell because they don't report the numbers. Now, why would you think that they don't report the numbers? The numbers just it's so ridiculously low that it would be a waste of resources to report the numbers, to even gather up the numbers and report it, because obviously, nobody in California is deleting babies, right? That's not part of the culture in California. That's silly. Or perhaps the number in California is quite high. Perhaps. Let's take California out of it. I'm just speculating, right? So if you add that 5 million, well, there's a couple ways you could add that in. So you could say, well, that would mean that women have committed 5,008,500 homicides over the last 5 years, compared to men's 61,000. And if you do the math on that, well, the percentage there is astounding. And it makes women look very bad. And so there's many counter arguments to adding it up that way, and one of them would be, well, it takes two to tango. And I would say, well, that's true. So if you have women deleting babies, wouldn't you also there has to be a man involved in that scenario to get the woman pregnant, and where's he at? Well, as you may be aware, a man doesn't have any kind of legal standing to prevent a woman from deleting a baby. That's totally up to women, not men. But even if you were to add in that same 5 million number into the statistic reported for men committing homicides, well, now you have, instead of 61,000 men committing a homicide and 8,500 women, now you have 5,061,000 men and 5,008,500 8,500 women. And the ratio there is 1.0105. So it's almost a 1-to-1 ratio. So in the past, you may have been taught that men are more violent than women. That's absolutely not the case. You may have been taught that men are more dangerous than women, and that's absolutely not the case. You may have been taught that men are more dangerous to women than women are to women, and that's absolutely not the case. And then you would be a fool to go out in the world and continue believing these things or acting as if any of those things are true. Because the numbers will show you that women are far more dangerous than men, and it's because women will delete the young and the innocent and the old and the helpless. Whereas men, for the most part, will delete one another on occasion. And it is an extremely rare occasion that men will delete one another. Most of the time when men are deleting one another, it's at the hands of an order from some rich men. What's the saying? War is rich men that know each other having young men that don't know each other delete one another on their behalf. And that's very sad. I would encourage you not to participate in anything like that. Although I would also implore you to understand that if you want peace, you need to be prepared for war. I'm 45 years old, and there has never been a single day in my life that our country hasn't been at war. Our country has a way of participating in war that seems to be unique. It appears that our representative government may not exactly be so representative. I digress. Back to the numbers. If you correct violent crime statistics for baby deletions, it changes everything. And you can no longer say things like, men are more violent, or men are more dangerous, or men are anything. You can't really point fingers like that anymore. Now, if you do understand, which you should, that men are not in control of reproduction, women are, then I would say you can't really add that 5 million number to the men's homicide number. What may be more appropriate is to add up how many men are doctors that are in the business of deleting babies, and add that number. And then if there was a way to gather information on, it would have to be self-reported, I guess, on whether or not the men involved in getting these women pregnant were supporting deleting the baby, then I think you could add an attempted homicide charge there, or I guess they would be co-defendants in that case, so you could add that. But I can tell you with absolute certainty that there is a very high number of men that are against having their babies deleted, and that women will go and do that anyway against their wishes. All that to say, don't do as thou wilt, Because for the most part, that's going to hurt you more than it helps you. It's a very short-sighted way of thinking and looking at things. It doesn't really account for long-term effects of short-term decisions. And that's no way to run a business. That's no way to operate your life. So be very careful. Now, I'm going to finish this drink and go out to dinner. Y'all have a great night, day, morning, whatever time it is, whenever you're watching this video. Nothing but love. All we do is win. Like the video, subscribe. If you think I sound ridiculous, leave me a comment. We can go back and forth about it. Have a good one.